just want to remind that we are in this topic of generosity. And we already talked to you, like with you, that God is generous. We talk about generosity because God is generous. And not because of his feeling of guilt, not because of abundance of his wealth, but because it's just part of his character. God is generous because he cannot be not generous. He cannot be greedy. He is generous. It's who God is. He is holy. He is loving. He is righteous. He is merciful. Also, he is generous. And because God is generous, he expects that we will be generous in our life. Because we are his creation, we are his church, we are his children, and he called us to be like Jesus Christ, Romans 8:28. So God expects that we will be generous, and we talk about not just generosity, but what to do to develop this part of your life, what to do, what I need to understand to be generous. Because generosity, it's not abundance of my wallet, it's not my mood, it's not abundance of my emotions. Generosity, it's abundance of my heart, it's abundance of my character. So to be generous, I need to teach myself, I need to train myself to be generous, I need to develop this part of character in my life, through my life. So last time we were talking about principle of sowing and reaping. And when I understand this principle, it helps me to be generous. When I understand that there's the law and it exists no matter do I believe or not, because behind this law there is authority of God. God said, you cannot mock me. While you sow, that you will reap even more. But same thing. So it's spiritual principle. It's not just business, it's spiritual principle. God said, this is my law, this is part of my character. And if you understand this principle of sowing and reaping, it helps you to be generous, because you know wherever you sow, you will reap the same and you will reap more. So if you want to have something good in your life, if you want to experience generosity in your life towards you, you need to sow generosity. Today we will talk about second principle of the first and the best. And we will talk, as Jack already said, we will talk about tithing. What tithe is, and if it's your first time in the church or second, third, sorry for you, but we talk about biblical principles, okay? So we don't need your money, but we talk about biblical principles. And first of all, this message is for the members of the church who belong to God, who confess that God is my Savior and my Lord. So today we talk about principle of tithing, principle of the first and the best. And later we will talk about what does it mean to be like to give first and to give the best. But let's start with what tithing is. Because, you know, it's very sensitive topic for a lot of people. Why do you put your hand in my wallet, in my pocket? It's my money, right? So I know what to do. I know where is more need. So don't tell me how to deal with my money. So we don't like this topic of tithing because it's about giving. You know, in my experience, I have two reactions. I saw two reactions on this topic. So there's first reaction from people who tithing, and pretty much everything they say we can summarize in one phrase: I experience a lot of blessings. There's this example we heard. There's another example, but everything I can summarize in one phrase: I'm tithing, and I experience a lot of blessing. And there is another reaction from people who is not tithing, and there is their reaction. Everything I can summarize and say in this phrase: I cannot afford it. I just cannot afford it. I have a lot of financial holes. I have debt. I have difficulties. I have health. I have other problems. I have kids. I have that and that. I just cannot afford it. So let's talk about tithing, and first of all, let's just buster some myths about. First of all, tithing, it's not Jewish law. Okay? Because a lot of people say, oh, it's not about us. We live in the time of New Testament. We live in the time after the law. So it was for Jewish people. It was for people under the law. I am not under the law. I am under the grace of God. Pray the Lord. Nothing about tithing. No, it's wrong. Tithing or law of tithing has nothing to do with the Jewish law. Like, not only with Jewish law, because in the Bible we can find principle of tithing 500 years before the law. Even 2,500, like 2,500 years before the law, we can find principle of tithing in the Bible. We can find principle of tithing in the law, and also in the New Testament we have passages about the tithing. So we can, you can count if you want, like spend some time, study this topic. But in the Bible, you can find at least 41 passages about tithing. And more of them, more than half of them, not in the law. Even 8 of them in the New Testament. And once it is in red. Jesus speaks about tithing as well. So it's not the question of Jewish law. It's a part of the law, but not only. We can find this even this is in the law, guys. Even it's part of the law. Nobody never canceled the law. Jesus said, I came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. The only thing Jesus canceled by his death and resurrection, by his sacrifice, like ceremonial law and sacrifices for the sin. The law said, do not murder. It's still actual, working today. Do not steal, do not lie, do not cheat. It's still the sin. Even it's in the law. Jesus never canceled the law. He said, I came to fulfill the law. Even tithing, it's part of the law. Jesus never canceled this. So that's why I just want to say that tithing, it's biblical teaching. Through the whole Bible, you can find teaching about tithing. You can find principle of tithing in the Bible. So I just want to give you a few examples. And because I said I'm tired a little bit, and there will be a lot of verses from the Bible, because this kind of topic need to have like solid foundation. So like to destroy all questions you probably have in this topic, I asked Eddie to help me with the reading all these verses. So when I ask, Eddie will read. But I just want to give you 2 passages from the period of time before the law, 2 passages from the law, and 2 passages after the law. Okay? So it's just 6 out of 41. But just want to give you a few examples. So first story you can find in the book of Genesis, chapter 14. And it's a story about Abraham when he fought and he conquered 5 kings, and he liberated his niece, Lot. And on his way back, he was met by Melchizedek, the king of Salem. It's not Salem in Oregon, okay, so do not. Okay, so, and he actually, by the way, you can read that he brought to Abraham bread and wine, a representation of communion. By the way, I'll show you today, like, small thing. I'll show you today, because somebody can say, like, what are you doing? Like, you're talking about money in this Holy Sunday when we have communion. We need to devote about death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Like, where's your conscience? Like, I'll show through the Bible that communion has direct connection to your tithing. Okay? So be ready for this. So this Melchizedek, he brought wine and bread to Abraham. And you can read in Genesis chapter 14, verse 18, that Abraham gave 10% of all his possession to the Melchizedek. Okay, 10% he gave to that king. And according to the book of Hebrew, New Testament, this king was the representation of Jesus Christ, and we will talk about. So Abraham knew about principle of tithing, and he obeyed. So then his grandson, Jacob, if you know this story, it's Genesis chapter 28, when he flee from his angry brother, and night caught him in the field, and he just took a stone and fall asleep, and he had a dream of the stair from heaven to earth, and there was angels on this stair. Like God talked to him, and the morning he wake up, he took this stone, put him as a monument, and he said, God, I promise to you, if you will be with me, if you will bless me, if you will protect me, and I'll come back with everything you bless me, I'll give you 10%. By the way, he forgot about, and he was reminded, not in the best way. So we will talk about later. So he knew about principle of tithing. Book of Leviticus chapter 27 verse 30 AD, if you can read this for us. Levites 27:30.
Every tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the trees, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord.
Thank you so much. Every tithe of the earth belongs to God. It is holy and it belongs to God. Guys, tithing, it's not my choice. Tithing, it's about obedience. So, before we will talk about generosity or generous heart, before you become generous, you need to become obedient. Before you become generous, you need to become obedient. And God said, it's few times you can find it in the Bible, even Jesus quoted this Old Testament, actually its words belongs to prophet Samuel. He said, God's count obedience more than all your offerings. You can be generous as much as you want, but if you are not obedient, it counts for nothing in God's eyes. That's why before we'll talk about generosity and all these things, like I can give to God, it starts with obedience, it starts with tithing, and God said, tithe is mine. It is holy to the Lord. It's not my choice. You see, never count tithe 10% of your income as your money you give to God. You never give. By the way, you never will find this word give next to tithe. It's always bring, give back, return to God. Because you cannot give what is not yours. You can return or you can steal it. There's just two choices. Return or steal it. That's it. And God said, tithe is mine. It's not just mine, it is holy to the Lord. That's why you not giving, you returning. You bringing back what is not yours, what is God's already. And God gave you 100%, and 10% of that belongs to God. And he said, it is mine, it is holy to me. So, Deuteronomy 26, verse 1 and 2. Eddie, please. Deuteronomy 26, verse 1 and 2.
When you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance and have taken possession of it and live in it, you shall take some of the first of all the fruit of the ground which you harvest from your land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put it in a basket, and you shall go to the place that the Lord your God will choose to make his name to dwell there.
Today, that place is the church, by the way. And God said, not just take 10% or something. He said, first. Take the first. Okay? So it's the law. Let's go into the, two examples from the period of time before the law, 2 examples from the law, and 2 examples after the law. But, during time of Jesus Christ, or New Testament. So Matthew 23:23. It's in the red. Why not? Let's read what Jesus said about. And by the way, it's very easy to remember. First book of New Testament, 2:3. 1, 2, 3. Okay? Matthew 23:23. Okay, Eddie, if you can read, please.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others.
Thank you. This you ought to have done without neglecting the other. You know, like Jesus got you anyway. So this you ought to have done. It's about what? Tithing or mercy and law and faithfulness? What is about? Oh, it's about justice. Okay. So it's not about tithe. That's why we have another phrase. Without neglecting the other. Doesn't matter like what you like, how smart you in grammar. Jesus got you anyway. Do not neglect, Jesus said. And another second passage from the New Testament, it's I already mentioned this. It's book of Hebrew, epistle to Hebrew, chapter 7. You need to read like whole passage to understand, but I won't mention this. He talks and he proved that Jesus Christ is the high priest, and he is the best and he is the only high priest we need. And to prove that Jesus is the high priest, the only high priest, enough for all people, he used different ways to prove it. He talks about sacrifices. He talks about generation of Levites. He talks about like ministry. And also, he used principle of tithing to prove that Jesus is Messiah and Jesus is the high priest. From all varieties of ways to prove that Jesus is Messiah, that Jesus is the high priest, God chose to use tithing as a proof, principle of tithing, as a proof that Jesus is the high priest. So we talk about tithing, we teach about tithing because it's biblical. It's not just the law, it's the whole Bible. Okay, and you know, there is some characteristic of this tithe, principle of tithing. First of all, I just want to mention this because we already talked about it is not mine. Tithe is not mine. Tithe belongs to God. You know, we already said that God never changes. God is who He is, and that's it. And there is always something belongs to God. God created earth, heaven and earth in 6 days, and He said, set apart seventh day, it's mine. He created this Garden of Eden, planted all variety of trees and bushes and everything, all these animals. He settled there, Adam and Eve, and He said, you can eat all kind of fruits from all kind of trees, but this one, it's not yours. Do not eat, do not touch. It is mine. Knowledge of good and evil belongs to me, not to you. Do not eat it. Do not go there. There is always something belongs to God. And God said, tithe is mine. It's not yours. It belongs to God. You know, you cannot give what is not yours, as I said. You can return, or you can stole it. Second characteristic of tithing, it's something that belongs or you bring to the church, local church. And I already showed this in Deuteronomy chapter 26. Levites chapter 17. By the way, it's whole chapter, God, like pretty much biggest part of this chapter, you can read through. God talks about offerings. Not sacrifices for sin. He talks about offerings, peaceful offerings, thankful offering, all kind of offerings you can bring to God. And He said, if you want to bring something to God, the only place you can bring this is tabernacle. Today, it is church. He said, if you want to bring something, sacrifice to God, out of the tabernacle, out of the this place, I will not accept this. Because all offerings belongs to the place God chose. You know, I like this example because a lot of us, or we relate to immigrants, and we have relatives and our home churches back there. and they are in need, and I have better knowledge how I need to use my tithing. Yeah, like it sounds absolutely wrong, but my tithing, and I know how to deal with it. It's not right, and it's not true. It is sin. The only thing probably I can compare this with is like when I come home and there's my wife, and she cooks great food, like, and I have enough food, and she takes care of me, of my clothes and everything, and I'm fully satisfied. I have everything I need, but my salary I give to the neighbor's wife. Well, because I think she has more need in this money, and she has more children probably or something. Like, well, but there's your wife, and well, she will find money. Like, she can handle it. It's stupid. But same thing sometimes we do with the church. You come to church and there's lights, it's not cold and it's not hot, there's food, there's just like good chairs and other things we have. Somebody paid for this. And you use it, but you decided for some reason that you have better knowledge where to send your tithing. It is not right. One of characteristic of tithe is belongs to the church, to the local church. And third characteristic of tithing, it's something that, so tithing is it's a test of your trust to God. And we will talk about later a little bit more, but God said, give me the first. You receive your paycheck, and first of all, you need to tithe. Before everything. And this is the way you test your faith to God. You trust God or not. So this actually, where goes your first payment shows who do you trust. Do you trust bank sold you the house? Do you trust credit card, Visa? Or do you trust God? Who do you trust first? Talking about tithing, it's a question of its characteristic of your trust. So, in what condition do I need to give? Like, if I have some financial difficulties, maybe it's good reason not to give. But Bible teaches us that in any condition you need to give a tithe to God. Like, you need tithing. Deuteronomy, Eddie, please help me. Deuteronomy 26:14. Deuteronomy 26:14.
I have not eaten of the tithe while I was mourning, or removed any of it while I was unclean, or offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the voice of the Lord my God. I have done according to all that you have commanded me.
Thank you. So we already read the first verses of this chapter, but in the context, God said, when I'll give you this land, and when you will reap all fruits of this land, take the first fruits and bring to me, and this is what you need to say, this is what you need to confess. I have not eaten of the tithes while I was mourning. So when I had difficulties, when I had bad period of time in my life, like seasonal life, I didn't touch it because it's not mine. When there was something else in my life, I didn't touch because it's not mine. Tithing, it's a principle of trust. It's a test. So, and why not? Let's open Malachi 3, and let's start with verse 6. Book of Malachi, chapter 3. Let's start with the verse 6 and till verse 11. Eddie, please.
For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed. From the days of your fathers you have turned aside from my statutes and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord of hosts. But you say, how shall we return? Will man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed you? In your tithes and contributions. Till what verse again?
11.
You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation, of you. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy the fruits of your soil, or your vine in the field shall not fail to bear, says the Lord of hosts.
Thank you. God said, and this passage starts with this phrase, I am the Lord, do not change. Principle of tithing, it's God's principle. God said, I not change. I do not change. It's just part of my character. You cannot cheat on me. You can play over me. You cannot mock me. This is who I am, period. And tithe belongs to me. And if you don't give tithe to God, you rob God, and you are under the curse. This passage didn't tell that God cursed us. He said, you are under. You know why? Because there is just two volume systems in this world, God's and Satan's. You cannot afford to give tithe till you start to give. You cannot afford till you start doing this. And if you are not giving, you are not under the God's principle, but you're under the Satan's, this world value system. And Satan always will find how to use your money. Like something will broke, your health, or something else, because you are under his value system. And you can break this curse, only start giving, and this will transfer you under the God's law. And God said, in other way, I cannot bless you. He didn't say, I don't want. He said, I cannot. Because I cannot go against my nature. I cannot bless what is not right. I am able to bless only right things. In what is right, bring 10%, first 10% to God. So, by the way, talking about Jacob, I mentioned this example. He said, God, I promise I'll give you 10%. And God blessed him. God protected him. There was miraculous situations in his life. And God tremendously blessed him and protected him. And he came back with good wealth, with a lot of possessions. And he forgot what he promised God. He bought some piece of land. He was powerful enough. He had enough power to conquer and to destroy. His family has enough power to destroy whole city. It was powerful family, like a mafia. I don't know. God didn't took his money. He had problem with his children. His daughter was sexually abused, raped, and his children became killers. And when he questioned God, why? God said, because you promised me something, and you broke this promise. I cannot anymore protect you or bless you because you broke the law. You cannot, I cannot bless because you robbed me with the 10%. Okay? So, there's two principles in the tithing I want to mention today, and I will transfer to communion because I promised these topics connected between each other. So, there's the principle of the first. God is always the first. God cannot be second. God cannot be third. God cannot be 23rd. God always is the first. He is Alpha and Omega. He is the first, He is the last, He is the beginning, and He is the end. This is who God is, period. You cannot change God. God said, I am the first. And you need to have God first in your life. You need to have God first, not just in your life in general. You need to have God first in all areas of your life, and finances as well. God's supposed to be first in your life, in your financial life. God cannot bless if He is not first. That's why He teaches, and you can like again and again find this, bring me the first. This is who God is. God never changes. That's what we read in Malachi 3:6. So, and there's Proverbs 3:9. Principle of the first. Proverbs 3:9.
Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce.
Honor God with the first fruits. First fruits belongs to God. God always first. And all first belongs to God. So if you can open Exodus chapter 13, verse 2, and then verse 12 and 13, and while you open, I'll give you context. God gave this principle, by the way, it's in Exodus, but God gave this principle before the law, while they're still in Egypt. And the context of the situation is when God said, today there will be plague, yeah, thank you, in Egypt. I'll go through the whole Egypt, and I'll kill all firstborns in their families, in their even within animals. But He said, you, children of Israel, take a lamb and his blood. So actually, it was God settled this Pesach principle, like this holiday of Easter today we have, right? And that lamb was a representation of Jesus Christ and His sacrifice, and we will talk about. So in this context, God gave a principle. So please read Exodus 13, verse 2, and then 12 and 13.
Verse 2, consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast, is mine. The other two.
12 and 13.
You shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All of the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with the lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem.
This is what God pretty much said. You need to redeem, or you need to sacrifice all clean firstborns. If it's an unclean firstborn, you need to redeem it or break its neck. Anyway, it's not yours. You need to redeem or you need to break its neck. Firstborn do not belong to you. First paycheck, first 10% of your paycheck, it's not yours. Anyway, it's God's. You will redeem it or you will lose it. By the way, here's a very good picture, like that you need to redeem unclean animal with the clean animal. Jesus is the one who redeemed all of us. God always the first, and that by tithing it's principle of the first. Same idea when we talk about first fruits, Exodus 23:19. God said, first fruits belongs to God, give it to me. Exodus 34:26, God said, the very first fruits of the land bring to the house of the Lord your God. Leviticus 23:14. First of all, give to God before you will cook, before you will make some food. You need to bring from all these fruits to your God. Give God the first when there is nothing yet in your pocket. So just think about it. God said, first lamb is mine. He didn't say the 10th one, because we talk about 10%, right? So first is yours, second, third, fourth, fifth, and when this sheep will have 10th lamb, bring it to me. He said, no, first belongs to me. Tithing, it's a test of your faith. Do you trust God giving Him first? Placing Him first in your all areas of your life. Bring me the first. even there is nothing. First of all, you give 10% to God, then you pay all your bills. Because everything first belongs to God. And there's the law of the best, and I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I mean, I feel that my sermon is a little bit long. But there's principle. Exodus chapter 23, verse 14 to 16. God said, there's 3 holidays when all male need to come to the tabernacle, to the temple, to celebrate me. First, it's Pesach. And he said, never come with the empty hands. When we celebrate this holiday, when we have Easter, when we remember, because Pesach, it's a celebration of remembering that God freed them from the land of Egypt. Same thing today, we celebrate Jesus Christ who saved us, who redeemed us, and God said, never come to my place with empty hands. Second, he said, second celebration, it's celebration of the first fruit. It's somewhere in May. First fruits, he said, all first fruits, gather them, reap them, and bring to me. There is harvest 4 months later. And you don't know yet how it looks like yet. Because it's 4 months after. But God said, test me. Trust me. All first fruits bring to me. And third celebration, it's somewhere in September and October, when you reap all fruits, take the best from them and bring to God. After you paid everything you need, after you spent money with and covered all needs you have, best from left over, bring to God. So, one more principle, and I want to finish with it. It's Genesis chapter 4. It's a very interesting passage. I know, as I said in the very beginning, there's a lot of Bible today because it's biblical teaching and it's sensitive topic, and we don't like when somebody look in my pocket. So I want to have a lot of Bible verses like to hide behind, okay? So it's not me, the Bible. So Genesis chapter 4, verse 3, 4, and 5. Please, Eddie.
In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell.
Thank you. And there's always the question why God rejected Cain but accepted Abel. And somebody say because Cain brought some fruits, but if you want to sacrifice, give offering to God, it's supposed to be lamb. No, it's not true. In the book of law, even you can find that you can bring as an offering to God anything you have, anything you got. And by the way, it's not about fruits, it's about heart first of all, because God regards for Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering, first of all, it's person, then offering. So the problem was different. When we read about Cain, it's in the course of time, so sometime. He had this garden, or I don't know what he had, all these fruit trees, and one time he decided, why not? I'll give something to God. So in the course of time, he brought to the Lord an offering, something gave. But when we read about Abel, he brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portion, the best, the juiciest part, the first and the best. And God didn't accept Cain's offering, not because he was angry or not satisfied, because it's against God's nature. He said, I cannot accept what it's not first and what it's not the best. I cannot go against my nature. I cannot bless wrong things. I can bless only when you bring first and when you bring the best. You know, tithing, it's personal for God. What I like about God, and I like to repeat this again and again, and probably if you heard my sermons, you can remember this. What I like about God, He never asks something from people He didn't before. When God said, be holy, He said, because I am holy. Love each other because I love. When God talks about giving, He said, because I gave. When God talks about tithing, because He was the first who gave the first and the best. And Jesus Christ is the firstborn. Colossians 1:15. 1 Corinthians 15:20. Romans 5:8. God gave His firstborn as a sacrifice before we believed, before we accepted. God made this in hope. There is no fruits yet at all, but God already gave the first and the only Son He had. God tithe first. It's personal for God. And you know, before I studied this topic in the Bible, I knew this from my childhood. I don't remember whole story, but I remember that I was just a child. My mom read me the story about woman and a chick. Like she made a decision, the first chick will be for the Lord. And when it's like first chick, she put like red, how it calls, red. Yeah, ribbon, and like mark. And there was a other chick said, and it's a matter of time she mentioned that this chick, it's like the biggest. And there was something scratching, like, why do I need to give God? Like, and she took this ribbon and put to another. I don't remember the whole story. So, but I remember this principle from this story, and I was like 6 or 7. The first and the best belongs to God. My parents taught me this principle. The best and the first belongs to God. You know, like suddenly modern children, they know about Batman, about Spider-Man, about other things, but they didn't know biblical principles. But God wants us to teach our children. You know, the first my salary, like fully I gave to God. It wasn't the big sum of money, but it was everything I gained and I gave to God. And I never regretted I did so. I learned this principle of the first and the best. You know, parents supposedly must teach their children to tithe, to give to God. Bible talks about teach your children that everything the best belongs to God. First belongs to God. Why? This is what God answers. It's Exodus chapter 13. We already read from that, verses 14 and 15. God said, there's the principle. Every firstborn belongs to me. Sacrifice it to me. Give it to me. And when your son will ask you, Father, why? You know, like I looked you over last 5 years and you killed like 132 lambs. You know, it's not the best way to build your business. Like, why you just kill them? And God said, this is what you need to answer. There was time when we were slaves in the land of Egypt. And when it was impossible for us to free ourselves from the hand of Pharaoh, God sent His almighty hand and made us free. That's why I give to God the first. You know, when you tithe, do it in front of your children. When you write a check, do it in front of your children. When you go to the church and it's like tithing Sunday for you, do it in front of your children. You know, children, they like wondering about everything and they will ask you why. Tithing is one of the best ways to share the gospel. God said, this is what you need to answer. Son, it's not always I was a Christian. There was time when I was sinner. And I struggled with my sin, with my addictions. I didn't know I was cheating. I was drug addicted. I was a robber. I didn't know. I suffered in my sin. And I had no power to make me free. But God sent the firstborn son to suffer and to die for me. And today I am saved. Today I am free. And it's worth it, every penny I gave to God. Teach your children that you are saved by grace of God. And it's worth it, every penny you can give to God. And when you understand this principle, the first and the best, you become generous. You willingly give to God because He gave first and He gave more and He gave everything. This how communion connected with your tithing. This is the way we give thanks to God for what He done for us.